This is a film about neighbors who'd lived alongside each other for generations. It's an investigation into why they started killing each other in the name of religion. It's about events in Myanmar, once known as Burma. The majority are Buddhist and Burmese. But Myanmar is a union of more than 100 ethnic peoples and has a large Muslim minority. The military ruled for more than half a century. Myanmar was cut off from the outside world. The generals then announced a plan to release political prisoners and call elections. My name is Phil Rees. In this film, we discover how former military leaders who claim to be ushering in democracy are in fact preserving their grip on power by triggering violence between Buddhists and Muslims. Over the past year, Al Jazeera's investigative unit has obtained a cache of confidential documents.
This document here could potentially incite widespread violence against the Muslim population.
So the phrase basically means
dirty, stinky Muslims. It's just a hate speech.
the most prominent victims of government policies are the Rohingya who live in Western Myanmar. Their plight has sparked accusations that the regime is intent on destroying them as a people. We have shared our evidence with the International State Crime Initiative at London University.
What these documents speak to is an organised, planned strategy. In relation to the Rohingya, that's a genocidal strategy.
We have also provided files and testimony to a law clinic at Yale University. They will issue a legal judgment based on data that includes our documents and those collected by the advocacy group Fortify Rights. The law school will assess whether members of the Myanmar government could face charges under the International Genocide Convention.
Has there been a purposeful action that will result in the destruction of this group?
All of these statements create a cumulative general tenor that points to intent.
I think the International Criminal Court should consider an investigation.
So hatta baje arar matai tomara na sakari huma maje tomara matar geti kemote ekam endilen la mata shotor hor manu dola gujji
Duruga ngoi mi do miro go boma miro di makala di kan bi ma menina miro go bingma boma tong bi me miro twa di ma miro di kan bi ma miro menine.
As well as the Border Security Force, police and Myanmar military officers were present.
Duru tabwe bare na pwe shi de duru ma tagwe shi de no bi do taya shi de tung ya shi de duru alung bare alung ngwan wi do jano ako ji tayaw shi de jano ako ji ga jano malai bu su ni tu ne de ma saga apne ali ma tu raganta de tu ko da ne khou le khou bi do takha de ati si wa re takha de
bu ko ma do uri to ba de tule bu ki tarar bu ka kana se ya le ra na bu lu ro bandi bandi ba de won me ka gulu tin for meji
General no bung ne thui bi do sain de sain bi do takha de general ko mong bi do ba mong bi do takha de tanyin long general ko mong bi do pong le tamudra ko thwa khai de takha de e di thwa khai da so mo long sain na yi khwe a shi ma general ko ba pyo le mi do di lo sin to bi mi do di lo mi do twa chhin ni ya ko twa mi do pyan la yin pai me
tomara jodi ikka jodi aiyo আর মতো যদি একাম বিনিময়ে তোমারা যদি গলো তোমারা শাক করে মারি ফেলাই
After 4 decades of persecution, over 500,000 Rohingya have fled Myanmar. Many now live as refugees in neighboring countries.
We've been speaking to hundreds of Rohingya. They felt that they had 2 options: stay in Myanmar and face death due to the abusive restrictions that are being placed upon them by the government of Myanmar, or flee the country. So they feel as though they have these 2 options.
For over a year, Professor Penny Green and her team have been gathering data from Myanmar. The State Crime Initiative defines genocide as a historical progression.
This is a process that can begin many years prior to the stage of extermination, and in the case of the Rohingya, it began many decades ago with the implementation of the 1982 citizenship law, which excluded the Rohingya population from Burmese citizenship.
The law denied the Rohingya the right to live in Myanmar unless they could prove that their ancestors settled here before independence. It's often an impossible task, even for those with documents. Kin Kin Lwin tried to run for office, but she failed to persuade officials that her parents were citizens.
birth certificate. School certificate. ကျမမှာအကုန်လုံးပြည့်စုံတယ်ကျမမိဘမှာလည်းပြည့်စုံတယ်ကျမအဖိုးအဖွားမှာလည်းရှိနေရတာလေကျမကိုနိုင်ငံသားမဟုတ်ဘူးလို့ညှင်းပယ်လိုက်တာဒါပေါ်တင်ပဲဒီအထောက်အထားတွေကိုလည်းမကြည့်ဘူးတင်ပြခွင့်လည်းမရှိဘူးကြည့်လည်းမကြည့်ဘူးမျက်စိနဲ့
We received first-hand evidence looking at
Over the last 8 months, a clinic at Yale Law School has been analyzing recent events in Myanmar in the context of the legal definition of genocide.
and we applied that evidence and those facts to the laws of genocide.
This definition requires us to ask 3 questions of the facts that we've found. First, can the victims be characterized as a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group? The second being, did the perpetrators commit any of these enumerated genocidal acts? And the third question being, did the perpetrator or perpetrators act with intent to destroy the group in whole or in part?
Rakhine State lies on Myanmar's western coast and its northern tip borders Bangladesh. Around 1 million Muslims who identify as Rohingya live here. For more than a century, Burma was governed as a province of British India. Hundreds of thousands of South Asians were brought to the country by the colonial authorities. Britain encouraged labour migration into Rakhine in order to develop its rich agriculture. Around 2 million Buddhist Rakhine also live in the state. They trace their roots to a temple complex at Ro'u. The Rakhine consider themselves a distinct ethnic group, separate from the Burmese. Rakhine historians view the temples as a fortress against Muslim aggression, which began when the Mughal Empire conquered India.
Muslim Empire အကြီးဆုံးအချိန်မှာကျွန်တော်တို့ဒေသကိုသူတို့ကကျူးကျော်ဖို့ကြိုးစားတာသူတို့အန်ဒရီကိုကျွန်တော်ကကြိုမြင်ပြီးတော့သူတို့နဲ့တိုက်ကြတာပေါ့လေတိုက်ကြတဲ့အချိန်မှာကျွန်တော်တို့ရဲ့စိတ်သက်ကိုယ်နှက်ကသူတို့အဲ့မှာဘာသာတရားကိုကျွန်တော်တို့ကလက်မခံဘူးကျွန်တော်တို့ရဲ့ဒီရခိုင်တဲ့စိတ်သက်ပေါ့ဒီနေ့ထိပေါ့ကျွန်တော်နားနေတာပေါ့လေအဲ့မွတ်စလင်ဘာသာတရားမွတ်စလင်တွေရဲ့အပြုအမူစိတ်သက်တွေကိုကျွန်တော်ကလုံးဝလက်မခံဘူး
There is a common perception that the Rohingya represent a new Islamic invasion.
ဒီဟာကိုကျွန်တော်တို့ကဖွင့်ပြလိုက်ပြီဆိုရင်ကျွန်တော်တို့ဒီနေရာမှာအဝါမျိုးခံသွားတယ်ကျွန်တော်တို့ဒီနေရာမှာပျောက်သွားတယ်
The Rakhine insist that the Rohingya are not a separate ethnic group. Instead, they are illegal immigrants from Bangladesh who lie about their roots in order to claim a birthright in Rakhine State.
ကျွန်တော်တို့ကဒီရှိမှာကျွန်တော်တို့လူမျိုးရက်တွေအဓိကကြော်ရွာသမိုင်းကျွန်တော်ရဲ့သမိုင်းဆိုအဲ့ကျွန်တော်တို့ရဲ့သမိုင်းဇစ်မြစ်ကိုသူတို့ကယူပြီးတော့ fake history ပေါ့လို့ပြောကြိုးစားခဲ့တဲ့ဟာတွေရှိတယ်
အဲ့ဒီရခိုင်မျိုးသိမ့်ပိုင်နိုင်မှုအတွက်မွတ်စလင်တွေကလူမျိုးတစ်မျိုးတည်ထွင်ပြီးတော့ရခိုင်ပြည်ရရင်လည်းပဲမြန်မာပြည်ကိုထပ်ပြီးအပိုင်စီအောင်မှာ
In terms of the the group element, I think that's a place the facts easily match up with the definition. Is that fair to say?
Even when the politicians and the people of Myanmar are referring to them as not a group, they're in effect referring to them as a group. They're identifying them as a specific group of people that, at least according to them, don't belong.
And self-identification can be sufficient to establish the group element. So if the Rohingya are identifying as a common group and a common culture, common language, common identity, that is enough to satisfy this element.
The first enumerated act is killing members of the group. In many ways, this is what we think of when we think about genocide.
In 2012, Rakhine State erupted in violence. Rioting began after reports that Muslim men had raped and murdered a young Buddhist girl. Over 100,000 Rohingya lost their homes. In the Rakhine capital Sitwe, districts that once housed Muslims were burnt and bulldozed. Several hundred, perhaps more, were killed. The overwhelming majority were Rohingya, though Rakhine also died.
The violence pitted ethnic Burmese against migrants from Bangladesh.
The violence and burning started after a Buddhist woman was raped and murdered.
Both sides fought each other.
If you look back to the reports on the violence in June 2012, we hear a great deal about communal violence. It wasn't communal violence, it was planned violence.
Al Jazeera has obtained this confidential internal United Nations report on the 2012 violence. It gathered testimony implicating security, political, and religious representatives in the planning and perpetration of the violence.
It is quite clear for me. According to the testimonies and the people that I talked to while I was on mission in the country, it was clear that all this was organized.
The government of Myanmar wants the world to believe that the violence that took place in Rakhine State in 2012 and since has been spontaneous, communal, or an unintended consequence of democratization. We know that that's not the case.
According to the UN report, there were consistent accounts that Rakhine from other areas were brought in to reinforce local communities prior to attacks.
Transport was arranged to take those who were going to participate in the massacres. Express buses were organised. Refreshments, meals were provided. They had to be provided by somebody.
If you say that local politicians were involved, were they acting, do you think, on their own?
We know that correspondence was sent to senior government officials, and next to nothing was done to prevent severe atrocities from taking place.
The internal UN report cited abuses committed not only by local Rakhine, but also state security forces, including the military, the border forces, and the police.
For the state to be complicit in genocide, they have to knowingly aid or assist perpetrators committing genocide. So there is a knowledge element that is tied to complicity.
We have indication that military officers, security officers saw these acts occurring in front of them and allowed them to occur under their watch, and that would show culpability of both the actors and the government officials.
The counter-argument is the bad apple theory, where you can just say, oh, there were a few rogue police officers. But if you look at what's happened, you can see that it is systematic and it's widespread and it's not contained to several bad actors.
The Genocide Convention explains that killing is not the only genocidal act. And in fact, numerous acts that don't result in the death of the victims can constitute genocide. And so one of these is the causing of serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group.
Around 800,000 Rohingya live in Butidong and Mongdor townships in northern Rakhine State, a militarized region largely closed to the outside world. Rare footage from Mongdor was captured on a covert camera by Al Jazeera's investigative unit. Only a small group of foreigners have visited.
The life of these Rohingya communities in Butidong and Mongdor, you constantly fear the threatening of the government, particularly the security forces. What I found was a pattern of systematic discrimination in all areas.
The first documented evidence of government-sponsored discrimination was revealed by Fortify Rights.
These documents that we released in 2014 essentially lay out the architecture of abuse that the Rohingya have faced for decades. These are documents spelling out restrictions on the Rohingya Muslim population, so restrictions on movement, restrictions on marriage, on childbirth.
This document, obtained exclusively by Al Jazeera, is written by district-level government officers in Rakhine.
Its title is To Control Outgoing Vehicles, and it says all outgoing passenger vehicles must be strictly controlled to ensure that no Muslim is on board. The idea of an apartheid system which privileges Buddhists over Muslims is absolutely on the state's agenda.
With restrictions on movement, that means people can't pursue a livelihood, they can't seek employment, they can't travel to a health clinic. If they become sick, they can't travel to a school. It impacts every basic aspect of someone's life.
Rohingya in that part of the country face abuse at every turn. We're documenting more violent abuses, rape, forced labor, torture, arbitrary arrest and detention.
There's a lot of evidence of state actor responsibility for the acts of bodily harm and the acts of mental harm. A lot of the testimonies and reports of rape, for instance, among the Rohingya describe military, police, state actors raping women.
The confidential UN document found in just one cluster of villages credible reports of 86 incidents of rape, suggesting a pattern of punitive or reprisal action by state authorities. This evidence is supported by videos smuggled from the region following a later incident.
It's targeted against the Rohingya in a very clear fashion. It's not that anyone in the Rakhine state is being raped, it's that Rohingya women are being targeted.
Deliberately inflicting conditions of life calculated to bring about the destruction of the group is another act that we think the evidence strongly suggests is occurring in Myanmar. This can include a number of different acts, and we've seen this in the IDP camps in Rakhine state.
In this area over here, there were a number of bodies dumped by government trucks, dead Rohingya bodies buried in a mass grave.
Matthew Smith has documented human rights violations in Myanmar for over a decade. Many of the Rohingya in this camp once lived and worked in the nearby town of Sitwe, until their homes were burnt in 2012.
This isn't a typical situation of an internally displaced person camp. This is not only a situation in which conditions of life are being created to destroy people, but in some cases people see no other option but to flee the country.
In the Darbain camp, many of the internally displaced persons do not receive food rations because they remain unregistered, and no one wants to register them.
Asura kana timba les di ara les tuli job dena mani tora sikra guri ara sara reka nudimbo tora reka na fabian ni ara sira guri belai.
They've formally submitted correspondence to state-level officials here, and they've been rejected every single time. So this is a community that's been going without rations since they were burned out of their village in 2012.
The food is available, but they're not being given it deliberately.
Right.
The There is also a lack of emergency health care. There are no doctors in the camp. Mohammed trained only as a pharmacist. This woman lost her child while giving birth. She went to the hospital but was sent back to the camp.
In this case, this woman clearly still has not been diagnosed as far as we can tell, and she appears to have a very serious condition and needs to see a doctor urgently, as with a lot of people around here. It is deliberate. It is avoidable. This situation doesn't have to be this way.
They're being confined to these camps and being deprived of food, and those two together are what's really leading to the destruction.
And deprivation of healthcare is something, again, that comes up in the daily reports from NGOs on conditions in the IDP camps.
Even if these conditions have not yet led to the mass death of Rohingya members, they may still meet the requirement of this element.
The Rakhine and Burmese have a very different view of conditions in the camps.
Bengali ဒုက္ခသည်စခန်းမှာပိုးရှံနေလို့ဈေးဆိုင်ဖွင့်ထားတာပြောမှဆိုရင်shopping mall လို့အဆောက်အုံကြီးတွေဆောက်ပေးမယ်ဆိုရင်တော့မှသူတို့တွေအယောင်းဝယ်လုပ်လို့ရနေပြီပေါ့နော်
The fourth act that we analyzed that counts as an act of genocide is imposing measures intended to prevent births within a group. People have also talked about this act as biological genocide. And we see this directed in two ways against the Rohingya. One is prohibition on marriages and extreme restrictions around marriages of Rohingya. And the second is extreme restrictions on births in the Rohingya group. This is one of the areas of persecution of the Rohingyas where the state has been even more explicit than usual about its intent in perpetuating these measures.
The law clinic was confident that sufficient evidence existed of government involvement in 4 genocidal acts. But there remained a large hurdle to cross.
We should start by saying that intent is the most difficult element to prove.
It's always difficult to get past the threshold of intent because with the acts, we can look at the evidence, but with intent, it's this analysis of a mindset.
In part 2, the government agents who sparked communal unrest. Is this evidence of a mindset? In part 1, Yale Law School collected evidence that the government of Myanmar had committed crimes listed under the Genocide Convention.
Intent is the most difficult element to prove.
With intent, it's this analysis of a mindset.
Now we investigate whether government actions can establish an intent to destroy the Rohingya as a group. Over the past year, I've gathered interviews and confidential documents that indicate the government is deliberately inciting unrest between Buddhists and Muslims. It's a policy of divide and rule. It feeds into a pattern of conduct that may point to intent. It's a world of dirty tricks and deception. A former officer in the country's military intelligence service witnessed the use of agents provocateurs.
To understand the violence and abuses taking place against the Rohingya population, we can't look at it in a vacuum. This fits into a bigger context in Myanmar, and that's a context of political power, manipulating the fears of the population, and other acts that state operatives are doing overtly but also behind the scenes.
In the late 1990s, Myanmar faced sanctions and its rulers and businessmen travel bans. The opposition leader Aung San Suu Kyi became an unshakable thorn in the military's side. Myanmar's rulers then tried to sow dissent in her party, the National League for Democracy. A US diplomatic cable released by WikiLeaks described how the regime tried to instigate a rift between Buddhist and Muslim NLD members in 2005. Fake letters supposedly written by monks pitted Muslims against Buddhists within the party. But it failed. NLD members knew it was a ruse on the part of the regime.
They are very good propagandists. Spreading rumor and sabotaging is their missions. They make the people worry, spread the fear, the hatred, and create conflicts. In this way, they influence the policy of the country.
ဒီလိုဗမာပြည်တပိုင်းကိုပြန်ကြည့်ရင်ဒီလိုကိစ္စတွေ communal violence တွေလူမျိုးရေးအဓိကရုဏ်းတွေကိုစစ်အစိုးရဆက်ဆက် military junta ဆက်ဆက်ကသူတို့နိုင်ငံရေးအကြက်တဲစီးပွားရေးအကြက်တဲတွေ့တဲ့အခါမှာအသုံးချနေရှိတယ်
In 2013, anti-Muslim violence spread from Rakhine State to cities in central Myanmar. It began in Mektila.
What happened in Mektila was a targeted attack on Muslims, not Rohingya, but Muslims who had been a part of the community in Mektila.
This woman was hiding with her family. A mob was outside. They demanded that she send out her husband. The mob was waiting. Police and army officers looked on from their vehicles.
Perhaps the strangest and the most revolting part of this massacre was that it was filmed. It was filmed by perpetrators themselves to show how proud they were of what they were doing.
Another woman watched the mob attack her father, who was with a group of students.
You can see police there, present at the scene where people are being killed. And they're armed as police and they're not doing anything. And you see people watching and sometimes cheering when people are being killed. It is so eerie and so revolting that there was so little response to protect people.
Around 50 died, one Buddhist monk, the rest almost all Muslim. Similar events were to unfold in other cities after the arrival of a mob.
the survivors said that they weren't even sure who they were, all of them, but that a lot of them had identical weapons, which is very odd. It seems like if a mob were to spontaneously come together, it wouldn't have happened like that.
The UN Special Rapporteur spoke to members of one mob who'd been briefly detained.
It was clear for me, according to those testimonies, that it was organized. These were people out of the town. They were brought to the area, and suddenly they were asked to start this kind of violence.
Well, who asked them?
Well, it was impossible. They wouldn't say at all. So one of the problems to assess these incidents is to establish where it is coming from. But the first step, it is there. It is clear that it was organized.
A monk renowned for his anti-Muslim rhetoric visited Mektila a week before the massacre. He claims that Muslims provoked the unrest. Why should they start the violence when they seem to suffer in the end more than the Buddhists in these communities? In 2007, the monkhood in Myanmar was involved in a very different conflict. It posed the most serious threat to the military's power for decades. It was the Saffron Revolution. A year after crushing the rebellion, the generals announced a plan for greater political freedom and elections. They crafted a new constitution. It reserved a quarter of the seats in the state parliament for the military. Control of the police, army, and security services would stay with the generals. They also created a political party for former officers. With Myanmar opening to the outside world, the military also needed new ways to manage opposition from the monkhood. As part of the transition to democracy, the regime released thousands of political prisoners, including monks that led the Saffron Revolution. Some fear speaking openly. Generals Mint Sway and La Te Win retired from the military and are now part of the inner circle of President Thein Sen's ruling party. Another former prisoner was Ashin Wiratu. He wasn't arrested during the Saffron Revolution. He was jailed in 2003 for hate speech that led to the deaths of Muslims. After Wiratu and his supporters backed government policies towards the Rohingya, he gathered wealth and influence. The regime now accepts his groundless remarks, which spread fear amongst rural Buddhists.
Muslim တွေများတဲ့မြို့ရွာတွေပေါ့အဲ့ဒီမှာရှိတဲ့တိုင်းရင်းသူတွေကလောက်ကျန်တပ်ဖြတ်ခံနေရတာအမျိုးသားတွေဆိုရင်လောက်ကျန်တပ်ဖြတ်ခံနေရတာအမျိုးသမီးဆိုရင်မရင်းကျင်ပြီးတပ်ဖြတ်ခံနေရတာတွေကတော်တော်ပေါ်ပါတယ်
Our investigation reveals how Wiratu helped transform the monkhood from challenging the generals to becoming their cheerleader.
အဲ့ဘာအကျဉ်းကနေလွတ်လာတဲ့နောက်ပိုင်းမှာဘဝရက်တည်မှုကအင်မတန်ခဲရင်းတော့တယ်ခဲရင်းတော့သူ့စီကိုရှောက်သွားတယ်သူ့စီရှောက်သွားတယ်သူကနေပြီးတော့ပေးတာမျိုးတွေစွန့်ကြဲတာမျိုးတွေရှိတယ်ယူခဲ့တယ်ဦးဇင်းတို့လည်း
အဲ့ဒါဦးဇင်းတို့ဒီ2017ထောင်လွတ်လာပြီးတော့ဗောနော်ထောင်လွတ်လာပြီးတော့ကျောင်းနေပြန်ရောက်ကျောင်းနေပြန်ရတဲ့ပြီးတော့အဲ့ဒီကနေပြန်လာပြီးတော့ဒီရန်ကုန်ရောက်တော့ဗောရန်ကုန်ရောက်ပြီးတော့သူဖုန်းနဲ့ဆက်သွယ်လိုက်တယ်ဖုန်းနဲ့ဆက်သွယ်တော့သူ့ထီကိုလာခဲ့ပါအောင်ဗောလာတွေ့ပါအောင်လို့ပြောတာဟုတ်အဲ့လိုလာတွေ့ပါအောင်ပြောတဲ့ခါတော့ဦးဇင်းတို့လည်းသူ့ထီကိုသွားတွေ့တယ်ပြောတဲ့ခါတော့ဒီ AI ဟာပြောတဲ့အတွက်ဟိုပြောတာဗောဗျာစုံမလာလို့ခေါ်မှာဗောထောက်ပံ့ကြီးပုံစံမျိုးနဲ့အခုထူနေတက်နေဗော
So how much money did Wiratu offer you?
အဲ့ဒီရုံးမှာကျောင်းမှာပြောတော့ကသူ10သိန်းပြောတာဗျ
Wiratu was recruiting leaders of the Saffron Revolution for his soon-to-be-formed organization, the Committee for the Protection of Race and Religion, known by its Burmese acronym, Mabatha.
ဒီရုံးခန်းဖွင့်ပေးမယ်ငွေတွေလည်းဘာမှအပ်ပေးမယ်ဖွဲ့စည်းတစ်ခုဖွဲ့ပြီးတော့အဲ့ဒီဖွဲ့စည်းအောက်မှာငွေကြီးနောက်ဆက်သွယ်ရေးပစ္စည်းရုပ်ဝတ္ထုပိုင်းဆိုင်ရာပေါ့နော်အဲ့ဒါတွေပစ္စည်းပြည်စုံလုပ်ပေးမယ်သူနဲ့အတူပူးပေါင်းမှာဆိုပြီးတော့လုပ်တာရှိတယ်
ဒီအစိုးရဟာစနစ်တကျနဲ့ဖြိုခွင်းပြီးတော့တတ်ရှူတွေးခွဲစနစ်တွေနဲ့တန်ခါကိုခွဲပြီးတော့ကင်ပလိုက်တယ်အဲ့ဒါကိုပါဏမှုမရှိတဲ့တန်ခါတွေကလည်းသူတို့ဘက်အစိုးရဘက်ကအလိုတော်ကြီးတွေဖြစ်ပါသွားတယ်အခုလက်ရှိအခြေအနေအထိ
ဘုန်းကြီးတိုင်းမှာရှိတဲ့မြို့ဘာသာသာသနာစောင့်ရှောက်မယ်အသိစိတ်ပေါ့ဗျာဒီအသိစိတ်လေးနဲ့ဖွဲ့ပေးလိုက်တဲ့အခါကျတော့ဟာဒီအဖွဲ့အစည်းကကောင်းနေဆိုပြီးတော့အဲ့ဒီတဲကိုဝင်သွားကြတာပေါ့ဒီတော်လိုင်းရေးလောက်ကြတဲ့ပုံကိုယ်တွေဘာနေပြီးတော့အဲ့မဘာသာတွေကိုဖြည်းဖြည်းချင်းရောက်သွားတာ
The Mabatha reinforces long-held fears that Islam is a threat to the survival of Myanmar.
The present regime of Thein Sein is prepared to use the hate speech for the government's own ends, and that is to marginalise, segregate, diminish the Muslim population inside Burma. It's part of a genocidal process.
Wiratu has hailed President Thein Sein as the protector of the Burmese race.
ဒီသမ္မတဦးသိန်းစိန်လက်ထက်မှာမျိုးစောင့်ဥပဒေကိုအတည်ပြုပြဋ္ဌာန်းနိုင်ခဲ့တယ်ဟိုသမ္မတကြီးကိုလည်းကျေးဇူးတင်ကြပါတယ်
အဘတော်ကိုချောက်ကိုလို့ဆိုတာကစစ်တပ်ကနေပြီးတော့ကျိုးကင်ထားပြီးတော့ပြဿနာတစ်ခုကိုသူဖြစ်ချင်လာတဲ့ချိန်မှာအချိန်ပဲဖြစ်လို့ရှိရောင်လို့ခုနရေပုံမှန်ပိုက်ကောင်းကနေရေလက်ချသလိုသူလိုချင်ရေလိုချင်ဖွင့်ချလိုက်မယ်ရေမလိုချင်တော့ပိတ်ထားငွေယူထားတဲ့မိစားတွေတစ်ခုပဲပြူထားတဲ့မိစားတွေတစ်ခုပဲလိုအပ်ရင်လိုအပ်သူအချိန်ကြီးထားတောက်လို့ရအောင်လုပ်ထားတဲ့ဟာပဲ
Al Jazeera has obtained confidential government files which provide a glimpse into the inner workings of the regime. This document was sent to local government officers. It shows how the regime contrives to stir up communal tensions. It issued a warning that worshippers at a Yangon mosque planned countrywide communal violence between Muslims and Burmans.
We have here a statement that in order for the creation of the violence, activists will be chosen from the students of Arabic orphanage schools and asked to carry out activities unacceptable to Buddhists. It is fomenting a sense that Muslims are your biggest concern. You should be frightened.
Muslims would torch either their own houses or the houses of other Muslims and take photographs and video records for immediate worldwide circulation.
This is absolutely propaganda issued by the state. What these documents speak to is an organised, planned strategy.
When I look at that document, what I see is government officials essentially trying to create a threat where a threat doesn't actually exist. When we see a document like that, we get very concerned that various authorities are working to incite violence against the Muslim population.
I took the document to the mosque in Yangon that was accused of plotting the violence. It's run by the Tablighi Jamaat, a movement that follows a strict interpretation of the faith but avoids involvement in politics. No rioting occurred during the months mentioned in the government document. Mosque leaders say they told the security services about the exact event, which the document claimed was plotting nationwide violence. Far from fearing the worshippers, it seems the security services have a close relationship with mosque elders. They were coy at answering questions about who was behind the document.
Could this be sent without central government having approved it, in your understanding of the way that Burma works?
I would be very surprised if a document like this did not originate with a national level agency.
Who can deter the policemen not to oppose the riots? Who can order? Who could do this? Who have power? Who have mandate? Who can give order?
Who could? Well, I mean, who knows?
But given the power of the military, the police here, it's not just wayward individuals who would have organized.
It's not individuals. Some important group is organizing this. In general, a pattern in all these incidents. The pattern is that the police stood by. They were not protecting the people, which is their responsibility according to the rule of law. And this is a pattern. So here we might have an answer.
So the police are responsible, the Home Minister?
Exactly. Who give orders to the police not to intervene and protect the people?
Given that we don't have any documents or any evidence of a specific written plan to destroy this group, we really are trying to see whether or not we can infer a genocidal intent from the facts on the ground.
We don't need to have a smoking gun document that says we are doing all these things because we want to wipe out the Rohingya. That's simply not required by law. Instead, the law says one has to show a pattern of conduct exists, that the cluster of circumstances could only point to the existence of such intent.
There are a couple documents that, taken together with the actions, lead us to believe that there is a strong likelihood of intent there.
The document that I'm looking at now is a public lecture given from the Naypyidaw military headquarters. It's from October 2012, and it does describe that sentiment.
The PowerPoint lecture, obtained by Al Jazeera, is part of a training course for Army officers.
Fear of extinction of race. It's particularly concerning that members of the military and other armed forces would have their deepest fears, unreasonable fears about Islam being perpetuated in a training program.
This document is all about schooling those soldiers who are going to be spread throughout the country in Islamophobia. It's teaching those soldiers to be racist.
Included in this appears to be allegations of a population explosion. This is a feature that's been consistent in genocides throughout history, that the targets of genocidal acts are regarded as a group of persons whose population is expanding rapidly and somehow poses a threat because of that.
It's terrifying, actually, to see it in an official government document, because we can well imagine the impact it has on the young recruits, the soldiers who are listening to this PowerPoint presentation.
The document refers to the Rohingya using the Burmese phrase koto kala.
So the phrase basically means
dirty, stinky Muslims.
In this document, we have a very, very clear example of hate speech in an official document training Burma's military. This document is from the Naypyidaw Divisional Military Headquarters. This is absolutely the responsibility of the military-backed government of Tencent.
Now we're at a point where we can take the evidence that we've been given and draw legal conclusions from those facts.
Assuming that that evidence is credible, that it's comprehensive, that it accurately reflects what's going on the ground, we think we have strong evidence to believe that genocide is occurring. Given the scale of atrocities being committed and the way that people and politicians talk about Rohingya, we think it's hard to avoid a conclusion that intent is present.
There is a strong case to be made that there are political forces at play, state forces at play, fomenting anti-Muslim sentiment, fomenting violence, and in the case of Rohingya, fomenting violence that could amount to the crime of genocide. Several of the most powerful people in the country should reasonably be the subject of an international investigation into this situation in Rakhine State.
You have the Minister of Home Affairs, you have the Minister of Immigration, planning policies that are impacting on the life of the Rohingyas. And of course, you also have the President of the Myanmar, because overall, it is the President who appoints the ministers.
While meaningful power in Myanmar remains in the same hands, the lives of many Burmese are improving. They are enjoying greater freedom. The country is no longer a dictatorship in the traditional sense. Opposition parties are contesting seats in parliament, but Aung San Suu Kyi, the icon of Myanmar's new democracy, has ignored the fate of the Rohingya. Along with many world leaders, they have chosen to engage with Myanmar's former military rulers rather than seek justice for a powerless people.
We are now reaching the point that the international community has to find a way to really raise serious concerns about the situation with Rohingya. Otherwise, the situation of Rohingya will really reach what we are warning, which is the stage of genocide.